So I want to talk about crystals with you, and we'll get a little bit into herbs as well, but crystals have become this massive phenomenon. Young people are using them, and we'll talk about those numbers in a bit. But can you tell us a little bit about what this process or this practice rather of using crystals entails?
This is so new age in depth, using crystals for protection, for to ward off evil, for enlightenment, to bring about psychic awareness, to place on chakras, thinking you're going to open them up and use the energy from the crystals. This whole thing is relying on energy with crystals. I had a crystal heart rose quartz, a pendant made for myself because I believed it was going to draw love. I was also manifesting at the time my spouse, my future spouse. But people are going to crystals all the time for protection. They believe it's going to protect them from negativity, from illness, all sorts of things. Billy, it's really scary and it's
It,
big.
it, it is scary. And it's interesting because this history apparently goes back hundreds and thousands of years. This is not a new practice of seeing these stones as having some sort of power. I mean, it almost sounds on the surface almost laughable or ridiculous, but yet many people, this is a very real practice for them. You talked about your own practice there, and I don't know a lot about the different stones, but I know rose quartz is one, obviously, for creating relationships, and there are a number of other ones that are out there that people use. Let me throw the number out at you, because we were given some statistics by Springtide Research that 44% of young people, 44% between the ages of 13 and 25, are using crystals and herbs. What is your reaction to that statistic?
Wow. Wow. I'm heartbroken by that to start because it just shows how deceptive the devil is, number one, and how he's not even hiding. These kids are so exposed to witchcraft these days, and they're really looking for something. They're really looking to feel better. They're really looking for identity. They're looking for love. They're looking for all the things that only God can do. But they're not hearing about God. They're hearing about crystals, and it's glamorous and it's trendy and it's spiritually dangerous. It's witchcraft, Billy. It's witchcraft because you are invoking, once you go to that crystal and you think you're going to manifest something from that, whether it's health, protection, increase your happiness, increase your wealth, what have you, self-confidence. You are invoking demons, because the demons are the ones that have the power. I have to tell you, the crystal is a rock that God created. It can't do any of those things for you.
Well, let's go there, because what you just said is incredibly important about what is going on here, because there are people who are going to say, well, I use crystals and they're wonderful. They're changing my life. The rose quartz is bringing me love and positive relationships. And they're going to see that their use of these stones, right, that
Mhm.
is what is doing this. But what you're saying is that by putting their faith in that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, by putting their faith in those stones and trying to use them in that way, they're actually attracting evil in that. And that's where they're seeing these quote unquote positive benefits that aren't necessarily positive.
That's right, 100%. You hit the nail on the head. They're making a choice willingly to put their faith and trust in God's creation rather than the creator, rather than God who made those beautiful rocks. And he did make them and they're beautiful. And that's where it ends. So when you start using them for divination, for witchcraft, and you may not realize that that's what you're doing, but that's what it is. You are invoking demons, and the demons are the ones who are manipulating circumstances, who are planting ideas. And some of these things become almost self-fulfilling because the demons really can manipulate things around you. And you'll pay attention to those patterns or to those, circumstances and make things happen too.
Yeah, and this other piece of this puzzle, because when Springtide asked young people, they sort of clumped together this use of crystals and then herbs, and there are a lot of different herbs out there apparently for different things. And it's an interesting conversation because, and I want to separate this out, and feel free to maybe speak to this when I'm done and correct me or add or agree. But it's one thing to use essential oils or to use herbs to heal things that God's given us. We take them because we take vitamins, let's say, that have certain things in them, medicinally or for health. It's another thing to rely on these herbs in a magical sense. Do you want to speak to that at all?
Absolutely. I would say the biggest one that stands out to me, of course, is sage. And that is so trendy. I hate to use that word, but it's true. Sage is actually, burning sage is called smudging, and it was a Native American cultural practice. They believed that they were purifying their space around them, getting rid of negative energy. And of course, that trickles into, clearing your space of demons. As a former psychic medium, that was a part of my ritual before doing readings. We would sage the room. I got hired to smudge people's homes, and I would be channeling. And the idea, again, is that the sage will protect you from demons or from this negative energy. But the truth of the matter is that demons don't care about sage. They're not afraid of sage. They're only afraid of Jesus Christ. So I argue that even going to sage or any other herb, if you will, and you're putting, again, your faith and trust in these items, these created things for your protection, for your spiritual safety, you're invoking, you're attracting. I mean, I'm sure they're laughing. Those demons are laughing at you. You're not protecting anything. It's a horrible thing to do. It's a horrible idea. Sage is delicious for eating and for cooking. I like to cook. I use sage. Very good. But not, it won't do anything for you in regards to satanic attacks, demonic oppression. If anything, you will become oppressed by using it and by burning it. And Christ is greater than culture.
And that is, and I love what you just said, because you see a lot of TV shows, right, where people are doing this. They're burning sage and they're doing it to get rid of the negative energy, or people buy a new house and they have somebody come through and do it, which is this is something that you did in your previous life, right? This is how you behaved. And just to get into your mindset back then a little bit and to help people understand, because you spoke to it a little bit, but I want to dig in a little there. Obviously, what you are channeling as a psychic comes from the demonic realm, but psychics don't necessarily believe that. They believe it's coming from these spirit guides or something positive. What is it, this negative energy? If you put yourself back in that place of being a psychic, what did you believe you were combating or protecting them from? What was that?
It's so interesting because when I think back on that time, I definitely knew there was a dark side, if you will. Like, I knew there was something evil. The New Age, a lot of people don't believe in hell or Satan. I don't think I thought it was Satan or a demon, but something definitely scary. I mean, I would see demons manifest, looking like the Grim Reaper, seeing like these scary animals, or if you would, not a ghost, but like a demon animal taking the form of an animal. So I knew there was something bad and something, kind of like when you think of light versus dark or good versus bad. So I knew that. And I believed that sage, burning that sage, or that process, would protect me from that, protect me from those scary aspects. And of course it didn't. It only increased.
That makes sense too. And I would imagine, and we can get in the weeds here a little bit, but if you are not you, but I'm saying hypothetically speaking of evil demons, if you're evil and you're trying to convince somebody of something, you may behave in a way that makes it seem like the sage is helping, right? Or makes it seem like trying to build faith in the wrong place for people who are using these things. Would you say that that's an accurate depiction of what often happens in these dynamics?
Oh, 100%. And it makes me think, of 2 Corinthians 11, 14, and 15. Satan masquerades as an angel of light. It's going to have to seem good and look good and appealing and like the solution. And of course, it's the problem and not the solution. I mean, when I was in that divination group that I was in, when we were smudging and we had the crystals in there, we had a lot of people that did crystal readings. I mean, it was a beautiful room with a really nice woman and really nice people, and we all wanted to help other people. I mean, there was nothing sinister looking about it at all. Very deceiving.
It is. Well, and all of this is really, and the thing that as we sort of round out the conversation on this, because there's so much to unpack, but I think a big question people have when they see statistics and numbers showing that 21% of young people are using these things weekly and that 44% overall are engaging in them. And that's just crystals and herbs. There was no question in here about tarot cards or any of the other pieces of witchcraft that we have talked about. But what do you think, when you look at the culture and where we are, what do you think is driving this explosive expansion of the use of these sorts of tools?
I think we have the same old problems. The kids have problems. We all have problems, right? So we're always looking for that solution. But in our culture now, they are loaded with witchcraft. It's everywhere you go. Five Below, I call that witchcraft on a budget. Instagram, social media, cinema, the movies, Ouija boards. I mean, it's everywhere. It's on the shows. It's on Netflix. This is our children's culture. This is their culture. As a matter of fact, it's heartbreaking, those numbers, but is it really shocking? I mean, it's heartbreaking, but it's not that shocking. It's everywhere you look. It's every spa. It's on every street corner now. You have metaphysical shops. Everything's about the crystals. And these kids are going through, I think they're so overstimulated too. They're loaded with anxiety, they're loaded with depression, and they're looking for help and they're looking to feel better. And this is what their culture, I mean, the devil's not hiding in today's date. I'm not saying that he necessarily was hiding, but he's bold and he's blatant and he's out there, and the kids are exposed to it constantly, and especially on the TV shows, the Kardashians, all the way as young as a cartoon called the Casagrandes, I believe it was called. There was smudging on there. The abuelo was saying, hey, listen, there's some evil energy in here, an evil spirit. This is how we get rid of him. SpongeBob SquarePants, of course. I talk about that a lot with the CG board, which is the Ouija board. Our kids almost can't get away from it. We really would have to lock down on the social media, the cinema, like I said. So I feel terrible. They're so exposed to witchcraft.
Well, and it really is a natural progression. You have a number of things happening right now. When you push the Judeo-Christian values out of the way and you say they're not going to be in school, they're not going to be in culture, they're not going to be in Hollywood, they're not going to be anywhere. And of course, there are little projects here or there and little movies here or there. But the reality is the culture has moved in a direction that has created this vacuum. And if as Christians, we believe that God designed us to have a relationship with him and that there's going to be an internal sort of compass pointing us towards something divine or something bigger than ourselves, when you push God out of the way, people are going to look for that. And it seems like a lot of young people in record depression, suicide, overdoses, we're seeing all this effect, but we're also seeing that gravitation toward the occult. And so I guess my final question to you, and I don't know what your thoughts will be on this, but in light of that fact that we actually see, and none of this is positive, but there's clearly a thirst for something bigger. That is the part of this that is actually interesting, right? How can we as believers, especially as somebody who came out of this world of the occult, reach people who are engaging in these things?
The exact way that the devil is doing it. Use these platforms, use our ministries for God's glory, and keep letting people know, keep making people aware. So people like me and other ex-New Agers, we're on YouTube, we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, and we're out there, and we need to go into the churches. We were just talking about that a moment ago, so that we can make parents aware. How much is this being preached right now in the church? So we need to do our best to keep making the kids aware, talk to the kids too. I don't know about you, but I know that my daughter, I'm around her friends, and they used to, congregate around the island in my kitchen while I was cooking dinner and giving me the opportunity to talk about Jesus Christ. That's what we need to do, especially in lieu of the fact that schools, I mean, just real quick to go back 1 second, because we were talking about movies and cinema and everything, and the schools, and like you mentioned, the world is trying to push God out further and further away every day. Schools don't want God in there. They want satanic clubs. They want, you can be whoever you want. You can do whatever you want as long as God is not involved. So we need to, if your kids are in public school, I pray, and I'm really praying for parents, Billy. I really am. My daughter is going to be 22, so I'm not in that, the small child range anymore. So my heart goes out and I'm praying for all parents. But let's keep speaking up and using all these things, because technology is not scary. God will use it. God is using it. And let's get into those churches and help equip parents with the truth of Christ.
Now, I love all of that, and that is a great place for us to close. Now, you have your own podcast, which we have worked together on. It's Ex Psychic Saved podcast. Mm-hmm. You're on all the platforms. People should download that, listen to it. It's incredible. But you also have a book. Do you want to do a little plug for that?
Oh, a shameless plug. Sure. I'm always happy to do that. Yeah, my new book is Out of the New Age and Into the Truth. And after 2.5 months of spiritual warfare, we finally have it up on paperback, or in paperback, on Amazon.com. And in this book, I'm actually going deeper into these topics, Billy. I'm talking about smudging. I'm talking about crystals, yoga, Reiki, and of course, psychic mediumship. And there's a gospel presentation in there as well. How could you not?
How could you not? Well, that's what you're all about. Your ministry is phenomenal. And I so appreciate you, as always, taking the time to explain this for us today. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Billy. God bless.